as I think about it, I always like to start with the advantages I think that we'll have versus some of the disadvantages I think that we would have as well, But some of the things that I think will work in favor for us, man, is their lack of running game. Mm-hmm. And part of me feels like you almost want them to run it. You want to invite that upon them. Because to me, I'm thinking to myself, which is a more scarier version of this Bucs team? Tom Brady coming out here, airing it out and throwing it and being in command the whole game? Or we playing the game of, is Leonard Fournette good enough to beat us for 4 quarters? And part of that, man, with this thought process, I'm like, man, I kind of like this. I want them to have to run this ball because they haven't shown that they could consistently do it. We said, yesterday we were talking about some of the things that we like and don't like about them. They've only had one game this season where they had over 100 yards rushing, and I believe that was the opener. I know it was against the Cowboys. So, yeah, it was the opener. But when I'm watching them, I'm just like, man, make them have to run the ball. Make them feel like, hey, man, they're daring us to do this, so to speak. But that's something that I definitely feel like is in our favor. The second thing to me, man, is at times Brady will take some chances, but he will make some mistakes. When I'm watching him, he doesn't make a lot of them. We're talking a handful, kind of like the Josh Allen conversation, right? It's like, man, he's not going to give you a ton of opportunities to create turnovers, but he will give you some opportunities to create turnovers. You have to take advantage of it. You have to capitalize on those particular instances, man. And when you're talking about him throwing the ball 40, 50 times like he's done a lot this season, those are a lot of opportunities that you're going to have, man. And that's the thing for me where I'm like, if they do try to take that approach of attacking us through the air, because I honestly think if I'm Tampa Bay, that's how I'm attacking us right now. I'm going to say, man, make those corners have to play. Make them have to defend the 50-50 ball. Make their pass rushers have to beat us. They know not to blitz us. Nobody blitzes Brady. Everybody knows. But it's like, that's the part for me where I just see, man, like we got to be right on that right there, man. When they're trying to take them chances and Brady makes those mistakes, man, we got to go ahead and capitalize on it. And then the last thing I had was just their ball security, man. It's not over the top bad, but they do put the ball in the ground. We talk about some of the picks, man. They will give you some opportunities. Those are areas when we're talking about our strengths. One of the things that our defense has consistently done is create turnovers. That's something that they just seem to have a natural ability to do right now. And I'm hoping that that continues. But when this team gives you those opportunities, not just Brady, the team as a whole, that's the other part of this thing where I'm just like, man, capitalize on that. Take advantage of that, man, because it is there. They have put the ball on the ground multiple times this season. That's something that I've like when we're talking about that margin, because we know it's going to be tight in certain areas. That's to me, those areas where we bridge that gap, where we make up that space, so to speak.
Yeah, it's tough when you're counting on Brady to throw a pick.
Yeah. Well, think about this, though. You watched that Falcons game. Could they not have had interceptions in that game?
Yeah, no doubt. And you're right about them putting the ball on the ground. The only problem I see with that is some of that throughout the season has been due to their depth at receiver, not their top guys. But no, either way, these are the ways we're going to have to capitalize one way or another.
No, absolutely,
you're going to have to do something because – as you mentioned, their running game's struggling, so I like that strategy.
Make them have to beat you with what they're not good at, almost like how Belichick
or maybe even
you.
or I think they can be good at it. It's just
I would agree.
They don't do it enough, but whatever they're uncomfortable in, at least, and that's what you were just about to say with Belichick. Belichick always takes away what the other team's strength is or the thing that they're most comfortable with. So for us, try to get them to run it and not take shots down the field with their really good receivers and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And maybe you can get a little bend but don't break action in the red zone.
Because the allowing them to throw the ball mentality is going to ultimately highlight where we are essentially weak right now because of some of the injuries that we're dealing with. Now, we'll obviously look at the injury report to see, what has changed once that releases today. But that is definitely something where I'm just like, man, our pass rush hasn't been as consistent as we needed to be. So do we go into this game just assuming that we're going to win a lot of one-on-ones? Now, the one person that I do feel has to win his matchup is Cam Hayward. He's going against, was it Luke Goddick? Or Goddick, I think that's how you say his last name. He has to win that because we first off know when you're talking about Brady, the pressure that comes from the interior part of the D-line is what affects him the most when he's not able to step up, when he feels just big bodies in his vicinity up front, that gets to him. So to me, that is definitely something that you have to look at. But outside of that, I'm like, man, I don't want to blitz Brady. because now you're just telling him where to go with the ball. I don't want to sit here and just play 4-man rush all day either and hope that our guys are going to win one-on-ones when they haven't been doing that consistently enough. So that's why, to me, I'm like, man, make it just blatantly obvious that we want you to run this ball. We want to see if you're really going to commit to it. Not the reckless.
Send two.
You know what I'm saying? But it's like, yo, show me that you're willing to really run this ball. We in nickel. Okay, we going to be in nickel, and dime. All right. Show me that you will run this ball. And from there, obviously, you'll make your adjustments off of that. But I think that's something that I would consider going into this matchup, just because I don't want to see can a 60% or 70% healthy Cam Sutton match up against Mike Evans.
On an island.
I don't want to see can Levi Wallace dealing with what he's dealing with right now, right? Because he's not even cleared yet, is he? He's still Levi Wallace.
No.
Yeah, he's still. So it's like, man, 70-80% of that. One-on-one.
That's concussion. I don't know if we're going to even see him.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we're obviously going to wait because he was he limited yesterday or he didn't practice yet? He was
him
DNP.
And Muth were both DNP.
So
I did hear from someone in the Twitch stream today that Muth was limited.
Well, because when I look back, he was definitely like in uniform doing warm-ups, like individual.
Okay.
So, yeah, that would make sense for the limited portion of it. And that is a part of how they bring you back. You have to see, number one, can you sit in meetings? Number two, can you actually go on the field and do anything? Then number three, all right, can we actually put you in a team concept, team setting? Then number four, you actually had to go through and pass the whole concussion test, so to speak, man.
That's on what, Friday, Saturday?
Yeah, typically at the end of the week. Absolutely.
Yep. No, you're right. I want to do the opposite of what we did against the Bills.
Yeah.
I don't want to give up 98-yard touchdowns and big-time explosive plays.
Yeah.
Make Brady and the Bucs move the ball down the field just little by little. If it is the running game, whatever it is, short passes, I don't care. But then try to lock them up in the red zone.
Yeah, speaking of that 98-yard pass, I actually got some film sessions coming out, too, later tonight / tomorrow, man. I actually talked about that play, man, because it's not just on the back end, man. Some of it's on the front end as well, man, in terms of the rush, man. So, it's one of them things, man. It's definitely one of them things.
Josh Allen was clean the whole damn game.
Absolutely,
it wasn't
man.
About him running around and doing the Zach Wilson stuff that Zach Wilson did against us. No, it was just literally him sitting back there.
Yes.
3, 4, 5 seconds and just letting one loose down the field.
And we both know if Brady's allowed to have that type of time as well, it's going to be similar in terms of the results, just because they're even, you know, so to speak, more healthier at their receiver position coming into this game than the Bills were last week. You know, so that's definitely one of those things, man. Now, some of the things that, in terms of disadvantages or areas that I am a little bit concerned of how we deal with certain players. Number one, man, Antoine Winfield Jr. To me, man, he's one of those guys where he is just slick as heck, man, in terms of his disguise, in terms of when you're trying to track him. Is he a nickel corner right now? Is he the strong safety? Is he a free safety? Is he just doing whatever the heck he wants to do? But he is always around the action, man, and he gets his hands on a ton of footballs. He's just, like I say, he reminds me of like the Honey Badger. I'm not saying that he's full on Honey Badger, but that's what he reminds me of when I watch him play. And when you're talking about a player like that, that's really slick, really able to disguise and do just things that you don't always account for versus a young quarterback, that's something that makes me just a little bit more heightened in the sense of, all right, man, let's make sure that he is not tricking Kenny, because he can do some stuff very similar to when we would watch Troy on tape. And you're like, bro, how is he over there doing that? But he's lined up, but like that doesn't compute. But for younger players, man, when it's happening fast like that, that can get you at times. So that's something that we definitely be, you know, cognizant of.
Whereas last week, Bills really didn't have that guy.
Yeah, they didn't.
Trayne Edmonds is out. Their 2 top safeties are out. You don't have Tre'Davious White out there.
It was more like big movement, everybody disguising. But when everybody disguises, sometimes it's actually easier to read versus just this one player just doing whatever. You're like, bro, where is he supposed to fit in this equation? Because that's the only part that's open, but he's all the way over here. But now, because of how he disguises and because of how he does what he does, they make it look crazy at times when you're trying to process it. And when you're talking about doing that in this short window of 3 seconds without being able to pause it, that is where some of the issues can ultimately present itself. A couple other dudes, though, man. When we talk Leonard Fournette, not as the running back, though. It's him in this, like, new James White, Rex Burkhead, like this type of pass-catching running back all of a sudden. I'm like, Leonard Fournette was already a handful to deal with as just a pure running back. But the way that Tampa is using him now in terms of just getting him in space and allowing him to just play free with that ball in his hands, man, is really number one, made it good for him in terms of his productivity. And you can see, as you talked about, with his receiving numbers and stuff like that. But more importantly, I just think as a defender, man, it's a lot more difficult when it's one-on-one and he's getting these open field matchups like that. The tackling rate becomes more of a premium. And if this was our full starting secondary, it's not as concerning. But when we're starting to go down that line, now it's not just can you cover, it's also can you open field tackle on these type of guys. Are you willing to? We've seen Akello Witherspoon throughout the preseason, throughout last year, and even the beginning of this year show he's willing to stick his face out there. He's willing to hit a guy. Cam Sutton as well. Even Levi Wallace. But now as we're going down this list, all right, Pierre, do it consistently. Josh Jackson, when you're out there, do it consistently. Whoever else gets these opportunities, do it consistently. Like, that's the stuff when I think of Leonard Fournette, where I'm just like, all right, this could just be a little bit of a nuisance right here, man, in terms of him as a receiver. But that's ultimately why I'm like, yo, keep him in that, make him be that running back version of him. I like that because I like Miles Jack a lot, you know, in terms of how he's been able to defend the run and ultimately get off blocks and stuff like that he's been doing. So he's definitely one of them dudes where I'm like, if I can get that isolated to just being a running game matchup versus a, hey, we're doing a whole bunch of passing game matchups, I think that's in our favor right there.
Two things with that.
Yeah,
I'm with you because we already got our hands full with the secondary and having to focus on the receiving weapons. And then if you could just have that little check down to a dude like Leonard Fournette, and you saw it how many times against the Falcons where he was literally just sitting there wide open. And the Falcons were so focused on everything else with the Bucs offense. And that's tough when you're leaving a dude like Leonard Fournette wide open because he could truck over dudes like you said.
And all it takes is one miss. If your linebacker misses the tackle or your corner misses the tackle, now this dude's picking up 10, 15 yards. Like, that adds up, man.
But then also, you think then we're going to be using some cornerbacks on him? Or do you think it's going to – you mentioned Miles Jack at the end of what you were talking about.
So what I was saying specifically is
more
like this.
Linebacker and maybe Terrell Edmonds.
So what I meant specifically is this. When we go to some of our zone concepts, because we're not going to be able to
have dudes sitting down there
we're not going to be able to play man predominantly if we're talking about coming into a game with no Akello, potentially no Levi Wallace, and a leaking oil version of Cam Sutton. I don't think they're going to be out there trying to do a ton of man without their top three guys versus that unit. Now, watching Terrell Austin on tape, his identity is a lot of Tampa 2. Tampa 2 allows your corners to be super aggressive, can jump any of the underneath stuff, but they know they got hope on top because those safeties are sitting deep, and the area where you're attacked is the honey hole, right? That area where it's beyond the squat corner, but shallow from the safety. Now, it's a tough throw. On the two edges. It's a tough throw, but we've seen guys make it. We've made it here in Pittsburgh, but we also know the challenges of it. We've seen us not make it here in Pittsburgh as well with that particular coverage. So that is what we like to do. But with that being the case, that puts that corner having to make that tackle on a Leonard Fournette out there. You know, when you're talking about going to potentially a cover 3, it's like, all right, we're going to have outside linebacker buzzing on one side, and that's cool. But the other side is going to be one of these safeties. Now, hopefully Edmonds is back and it's him. Cool. I like that a lot. But even still with that, I still think of how Leonard Fournette and Mike Mitch went at it. I'm like, Mike Mitch, the one that he can't do is hit. And I'm like, man, there was some times where they was going at it. I'm like, bro, I like my dog, but Lord, that way,
we know what we saw.
You know what we saw. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, yo, that's my partner. You know Mitch, my partner. You know that my dog. But it was like, bro, all right, what you want to do? How you feel about that, Mitch? If you like it, I like it. If you don't like it, then we ain't gotta like it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how it went. So yeah. But that's some of the areas. So that's why when I say these corners,
right,
that's what I'm referring to specifically, because we're not going to be able to play a lot of just man. I don't see us doing a ton of that.
Doesn't seem smart.
Yeah. In fact, when we talk about the 98-yard touchdown, I mean, we were bringing up pressure, but it was man. And when you go man, it's like,
what was that? The cover 1.
Yeah. So man is just cover 1. So you have just single high safety, and that was Trey Noah was the single high. It's like, man, you're asking a lot from your corner. You're asking a lot from this middle field safety player, and it's not, you know. In that case, it wasn't Edmonds either or Minka. It was Norwood. So it's like, man, you're not even with your top 2 guys, and you're asking him to do some of this stuff. It can just be really challenging. So I don't think they're gonna do a ton of that again with this group of receivers coming in and with how well Brady's been throwing the ball.
How do you feel about Austin's calling up to this point?
I like it. It's just like I said, man, when I'm watching him, I don't necessarily hate some of the calls. I do feel like some of it is personnel based though. Like when I see him having to do a ton of the cover 3 stuff, and I'm looking, it's like, well, yeah, these guys are injured right now. So you're not going to ask, you know, especially last game when it was Josh Jackson who had just got here, and you're asking James Pierre, and it's like, all right, I want you two guys to play a ton of men. And Arthur Mile, I want you to play a ton of men. But also, whenever Stephon Diggs is in the slot, I want you guys to essentially double him or the inside linebacker relate to him. They would do that as well. And that's cool, but it's just like, man, those schemes I like, but you can't do a ton of them because they obviously, expose you to different weaknesses, right? When you're doubling a guy, that means somebody else is going to be, having a one-on-one. Now, when you're doubling Diggs, that's cool, but when they got Gabe Davis over here and he's going off, so to speak, it's like you can't really do that either. And that's some of the stuff that you're dealing with as well. But to me, Terrell Austin, I think, has been doing a good job. And like I said, especially the upfront stuff, it hasn't necessarily produced dividends yet in the front. But I can definitely tell you without a doubt that this dude is going through the Rolodex of everything to make that front a lot better in the absence of TJ Watt, whether you're talking the pass rush or the running game. It's just some of this stuff. You're just like, man, my best non-pass rusher at DN right now is DeMarvin Leal in terms of setting the edge, but he's also the most inconsistent in terms of just gap responsibility. So that puts Miles, that puts Devin, that puts Spillane in binds at times. But you're not going to take him out of there because he gives you the most productivity right now at the 5 technique or 6 technique in terms of playing the run. Now, when you talk about Malik Reed and Alex Highsmith, they're better as pass rushers out there. But in terms of the consistency of them winning, that hasn't been happening frequently enough. And that's some of the stuff.
Highsmith has had his games. He's had like two or three games where he's gone off. But then there's a game or two where he's a no-show.
Yeah. But we did say this was going to be a better matchup in terms of, not better matchup for him, just a higher quality guy.
Donovan Smith at left tackle. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's their backup.
Yeah, like I said, it should.
Josh Wells got hurt.
It should. You go Dukes. Go number 25 ranked Dukes. As I
but
get
we
there
even
while I
said
can.
that last week with the Bills, right? Although they had Deion Dawkins.
For me, I didn't think that this was going to be. Yeah, I thought
he took
Jets
advantage of the Jets one. Yeah. That was the main one.
But he still left 3 on the table or 2 more on the table.
That was more
the
Zach
issue.
Wilson having oil all over him.
Yeah, or lube, whatever one.
Exactly.
Yeah, whichever one, man. But those couple of things right there, man, definitely kind of stick out. And then just a miscellaneous dude. He hasn't necessarily, like I said, crazily produced. But to me, I like him a lot. I think that this dude should be a lot more productive player. I'm hoping it doesn't turn up this week. But Joe Tryon, was his last name? Shayinka. He says the DN outside linebacker that they have, man. The dude knows how to rush the passer. He's super smooth, explosive, great size on him. But the numbers aren't there. I don't know. But I like his game, man. I watch him. I'm just like, yo, he creates issues. Like certain things that he was starting to do against Atlanta where I'm like, man, you're starting to get a
he
rhythm.
got a sack against them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And he had a dope spin move. It was like a outside spin move that he had. Speed rush, has the power. Like a complete dude, just the productivity isn't there completely. Now, like I said, I'm hoping that doesn't pick up this week. But he is one of those dudes that knowing a Dan Moore and how at times he could be a little bit up and down, he just makes me a little nervous because I'm like, yo, if it can get to what it looked like in Atlanta for him, that could be one of those issues right there. But I'm hoping that it does not get there,
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are some of the advantages and disadvantages that I think, we will have to deal with and we will have in our favor in this particular matchup right here, man.